The Santa Monica Pier was alive with the vibrant hum of a Saturday afternoon. The air smelled of buttered popcorn, roasted nuts, and fried dough from the vendors lining the boardwalk. The chatter of families mixed with the cries of seagulls overhead and the deep boom of waves crashing beneath the wooden planks. Street performers strummed guitars, painted faces, and juggled in the open square, drawing clusters of clapping onlookers. Amid the bustle, Emily Carter, a 15-year-old girl in a wheelchair, rolled along carefully, her small hands gripping the rubber wheels. The salty ocean breeze tugged strands of her brown hair into her face, but she didn't mind. This was her favorite place in the world. The pier stretched out into the Pacific, carrying her away from the ordinary and into a space that always felt magical. Emily had been born with cerebral palsy. Walking wasn't an option, and though she'd faced stares and pitying looks her whole life, she refused to let it steal her joy. She begged her mom every weekend to bring her to the pier. For Emily, the ocean represented freedom, endless, vast, and unbound, even if her own body wasn't. She paused by the railing, her eyes wide as she watched the sunlight scatter across the water like diamonds. A man with a saxophone played a soulful tune nearby, and Emily smiled. For a moment, she closed her eyes, listening, breathing, absorbing every sound and smell. She wanted to hold on to this peace forever. But peace can be fragile. 3 teenage boys, around 17 or 18, swaggered down the pier after leaving the arcade. They were loud, shoving each other and laughing in the careless way boys often do when they want attention. One wore a black hoodie with the hood pulled up despite the sun, another sported a baseball cap turned backward, and the third wore a chain that clinked against his shirt as he walked. Their eyes landed on Emily. They slowed. Smirks crept across their faces. "Hey," the boy in the hoodie snickered, elbowing his friend. "Look at this." The one with the cap leaned forward, pretending to squint. "Well, would you look at that? Wheels for legs taking up the boardwalk." Emily's heart skipped. She pressed her hands tighter to her wheels, trying to pretend she hadn't heard. She'd learned that ignoring cruelty sometimes made it stop. But these boys weren't the type to stop. The third boy with the chain bent low so his face was almost level with hers. His voice dripped mockery. "What's the matter, girl? Can't walk? Or are you just too lazy to stand up?" His friends snorted with laughter. A couple walking past glanced over, their expressions troubled, but they kept going. Emily's cheeks flushed hot. She wanted to vanish into the waves. "Leave me alone," she whispered, trying to push her wheelchair forward. "Leave me alone," the boy in the cap mimicked in a high-pitched whine. He strutted beside her, kicking at the front wheel. "Hey, move it, Cripple. You're blocking traffic." Suddenly the boy in the hoodie gave her chair a hard shove from behind. The impact jolted Emily forward violently, nearly knocking her onto the wooden planks. She gasped and clutched her lap belt, panic shooting through her. "Stop it," she cried, her voice breaking. But their laughter grew louder. One of them bent his arms in awkward angles, mocking her stiff movements. Another leaned so close Emily could smell his sour breath. "What are you gonna do? Roll over my foot?" Her throat tightened. Strangers walked by, pretending not to see. Some stared for a moment then looked away quickly, as if the scene was uncomfortable but not their problem. Emily's eyes blurred with tears. Her body shook, not just from fear but from humiliation. The boy with the chain leaned down again. "Pathetic," he sneered. Then he kicked the side of her chair hard. The metal frame rattled. Emily whimpered, her chest heaving. She thought of her mother, sitting just a little way back on a bench, probably lost in a book. If she called for help, would her mom even hear her over the noise of the pier? The boys were circling her now, like predators with their prey. People watched but nobody intervened. Emily's world shrank into their cruel laughter, the sting of their words, the looming dread that this might not stop. And then, a sound cut through the noise of the pier. Low at first, a deep growl that grew louder, layered, multiplied. It wasn't the playful whir of scooters or the puttering of mopeds. This was heavier, stronger, like thunder rolling across wood and steel. Engines, dozens of them, heads turned up and down the pier. Families paused mid-step. The crowd began to murmur as the vibration intensified, rattling the very planks beneath their feet. At the entrance to the pier, a line of motorcycles appeared, chrome gleaming in the golden sun, headlights glowing, engines snarling like lions. They rode 2 by 2, filling the wide stretch with their presence. The sound was deafening, commanding. Emily blinked, frozen, as the boys stopped their jeering and turned, their smirks faltering. The motorcycles rolled forward slowly, deliberately, like a tide advancing toward shore. There were dozens of them, men and women in black leather jackets, patches stitched across their backs with skulls, flames, eagles, and names that screamed intimidation. Tattoos covered arms, beards hung thick, and mirrored sunglasses reflected the ocean's light. The crowd parted as they came, the sound of boots clinking against steel pegs as some began to dismount. The wooden boards shivered under their weight. Emily's tears stilled. She didn't know whether to feel more afraid or more hopeful. The boys, however, looked terrified. Their bravado melted instantly. One of the bikers, massive and broad-shouldered with a long gray beard, stepped forward. His vest bore the emblem, Guardians of the Coast. His boots thudded as he walked straight toward the boys. He stopped just inches from them, towering like a mountain. "What?" His voice rumbled like a growl of thunder. "Did you just say to her?" The boys froze. One swallowed hard. "And nothing, sir," he stammered. "We were just playing around." Another tried to chuckle nervously. "Yeah, just joking. No big deal." Behind the leader, a woman with braided hair and a helmet under her arm knelt beside Emily, resting a gentle hand on her trembling shoulder. "Hey, sweetheart, you okay?" Emily's lip trembled. Her voice cracked as she whispered, They kicked me." The woman's expression hardened instantly. She glanced at her brothers and sisters in leather. Every biker's eyes turned to the boys with cold, unyielding stares. The bearded leader stepped closer until the boys were forced to back away. His shadow swallowed them. "You think you're tough?" His voice was low, dangerous. "Picking on a girl in a wheelchair. That makes you strong." The boys shook their heads rapidly, stammering excuses. But the bikers didn't move, didn't blink. The silence of the crowd pressed down on them, making the weight unbearable. And then the leader's voice boomed again. "Get out of here, before I decide to teach you what strength actually looks like." The boys didn't need telling twice. They bolted, shoving past startled tourists, their sneakers pounding against the wooden planks as they fled down the pier. The applause started softly, a few claps from nearby witnesses, then swelled until the entire pier seemed to thunder with approval. Emily's tears spilled again, but this time, they weren't from shame, they were from relief. For the first time since the boys had approached, she felt safe. Surrounded by the roar of engines and the wall of leather-clad strangers, she realized she wasn't alone anymore. The Guardians of the Coast had arrived. The boys were gone, their hurried footsteps fading into the distance, leaving only the sound of engines idling and the ocean crashing against the pier below. A hush still hung over the crowd, broken only by scattered applause and murmurs. Families who had watched the bullying in silence now whispered to one another, some ashamed they hadn't acted, others in awe of what they had just witnessed. Emily sat frozen in her chair, her heart still racing from the ordeal. Her hands clung to the wheels, her knuckles pale. She wanted to breathe, to speak, but her throat was tight with a tangle of fear, relief, and confusion. The woman biker, the one with braided hair and flames painted across her helmet, crouched down to meet Emily's eyes. Her voice, though soft, carried warmth that instantly steadied the trembling girl. "You're safe now, sweetheart," she said. "Those boys won't bother you again." Emily swallowed hard, tears threatening again, but this time from gratitude. She gave the woman a shaky nod. "Emily," her mother's voice pierced through the crowd as she hurried toward them, her tote bag bouncing against her side. Her eyes were wide with panic, and when she saw her daughter surrounded by bikers, she gasped. "Oh my God, are you all right? What happened?" Emily's lips quivered, but before she could answer, the braided woman stood and gently explained. "Some punks thought it was funny to push her chair around. But don't worry, ma'am, we handled it." Emily's mother pressed a hand to her chest as if steadying her own pounding heart. She bent to hug Emily tightly, whispering into her hair. "My baby, are you hurt?" Emily shook her head, though her voice was small. "They were mean, Mom. Really mean." Her mother's eyes brimmed with tears. She looked up at the circle of bikers and whispered, "Thank you. I don't know how to thank you enough." The leader of the group, the tall, bearded man with the vest that read Guardians of the Coast, pulled off his sunglasses. Beneath the tough exterior, his eyes were kind but serious. He crouched down so he was eye level with Emily. "Listen here, little lady," he said in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder but held no cruelty. "Those boys thought they could make themselves bigger by making you smaller. That's what cowards do. But you, sitting here, holding your ground, you've got more strength in you than all of them put together." Emily blinked at him, her tears glistening. "But, I couldn't do anything. I just sat here." The leader shook his head firmly. "Don't you ever think that makes you weak. Courage isn't about throwing fists or standing tall. Courage is about getting up every day, facing a world that doesn't always understand you, and still choosing to smile at the ocean. He tapped her wheelchair gently. "You've got courage, kid. Don't let anyone tell you different." Emily's lips trembled into the faintest smile. For the first time that day, she felt seen, not as fragile, not as helpless, but as strong. The braided woman leaned down again. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emily," she whispered. "Well, Emily," she said with a grin, "today you've got about 50 new brothers and sisters watching your back." She gestured at the sea of bikers standing tall around them, their leather jackets gleaming with patches and emblems. The crowd that had gathered began to clap again, some cheering, others even wiping away tears. A little boy tugged his father's hand and whispered, "Dad, those bikers are like superheroes." Emily's mother gave a watery laugh. "They certainly are." One of the bikers stepped forward with 2 cones of cotton candy, bright pink and blue. "For the bravest girl on the pier," he said, handing one to Emily and the other to her mom. Emily's face lit up as she accepted it, her hands still trembling slightly. As she took a bite, sticky sugar melting on her tongue, laughter bubbled up in her chest for the first time since the bullies had arrived. The bikers smiled at the sight. The leader straightened and looked at the crowd. "Let this be a reminder," he said loudly enough for those nearby to hear. "If you see someone being hurt, you don't turn away. You stand up. You don't need a leather jacket or a motorcycle to do the right thing." The crowd murmured in agreement, some nodding solemnly. A few looked embarrassed, knowing they had stood by silently earlier. The woman with the braids knelt once more, speaking just to Emily. "You ever feel scared again, you remember this, there's a whole world of people out there ready to protect you. And one day, maybe you'll be that person for someone else." Emily's smile grew stronger. She nodded firmly this time. "I will." For the next half hour, the bikers stayed with Emily and her mother. They showed her their motorcycles, letting her touch the chrome handles and sit closer to the roaring machines. They posed for pictures with her, her tiny frame surrounded by leather and steel, her grin wide and unshakable. Tourists even joined in, snapping photos of the heartwarming scene. When it was time to go, the leader put his sunglasses back on and gave Emily a mock salute. "Stay brave, Emily. We'll be keeping an eye out for you." The engines roared to life again, the pier vibrating as the guardians of the coast mounted their bikes. One by one, they rolled out in formation, the sound of their exhausts echoing like thunder down Ocean Avenue. As the last bike disappeared into the distance, Emily's mother squeezed her daughter's hand. "You see, sweetheart, the world may have bullies, but it also has heroes." Emily gazed at the horizon where the bikes had vanished. Her voice was quiet but certain. "I'm going to remember this forever." The pier returned to its usual buzz, the music, the laughter, the waves, but for Emily, nothing was the same. She had come face to face with cruelty, but she had also seen the power of courage, kindness, and unity. That night, when she lay in bed, Emily replayed it all. The boys' cruel words, the roar of engines, the way strangers had turned into protectors. And she realized something important. The bullies' voices had already begun to fade, but the voices of the bikers stayed loud in her heart. Moral of the story: the strength of bullies is temporary and hollow, but the strength of those who stand up for others lasts a lifetime. True heroes are not defined by looks, power, or fear, but by courage and compassion.